What's up, everybody? I'm KIRK, and this is the State of the Boom, a monthly recap of FPS news, releases, and a look at upcoming titles. Unfortunately, we're kicking off this video with what is likely the most depressing gaming news story of the year. Earlier in the month, Microsoft laid off 9,000 employees company-wide, 4% of their workforce, with a sizable impact on the Xbox gaming division and its subsidiaries. Blizzard, King, Turn 10, ZeniMax, and Halo Studios all lost people, along with the Call of Duty studios, Raven Software, Sledgehammer Games, and High Noon Studios. ZeniMax Online Studios and Rare both had to cancel games in development due to the layoffs, with an unknown number of Rare employees being laid off due to the cancellation. This also forced Xbox Game Studios to pull funding from a number of games they were set to publish from outside developers, one of which we'll be covering in the next story. But the most shocking development was the cancellation of the Perfect Dark reboot and the closure of its studio, The Initiative. Originally announced in 2020, Perfect Dark was reported to have been going through some major development issues. But following Crystal Dynamics coming on as co-developer and an impressive demo shown off last year, it seemed like everything was back on track and looking promising. Far more promising than other struggling FPS reboots out there. Cost-cutting was naturally a reason for the layoffs as claimed by Microsoft, but sizable investments in artificial intelligence weighing on their margins was also cited as a core reason, which basically means, if I understand all of this correctly, Microsoft invested so much on AI infrastructure specifically, that it was cutting into their profits, and to maintain their profitability, they had to get rid of some people. Despite Microsoft pulling in nearly $26 billion in net income for the March quarter, well ahead of expectations, and keeping them ranked as one of the most profitable companies in the S&P 500. This also follows a round of layoffs Microsoft did this last January, as well as when they laid off 10,000 employees back in 2023. According to a Microsoft spokesperson via email, the company continues to, quote, implement organization changes necessary to best position the company and teams for success in a dynamic workplace. Yes, I'm sure that will comfort and ease the anxiety of your former employees, many of which have years of invaluable experience that the games industry risks losing forever as devastating and demoralizing layoffs force them to pursue safer career choices. Good job, Microsoft. Romero Games, the Galway, Ireland-based studio led by id Software co-founder John Romero and his wife, Brenda Romero, announced that the publisher for their in-development AAA first-person shooter had decided to drop their game and pull their funding. While they were legally not able to identify who the publisher was, it was quickly deduced that it was likely Xbox Game Studios and related to the mass layoffs, seeing as the news came concurrently. Here's the announcement on screen if you want to pause the video and read for yourself. According to Romero Games, the decision was purely financial and was not reflective of the team's performance or the quality of the project, stating that they hit every milestone on time and was constantly receiving high praise from the publisher. While initially it was reported that this would lead to Romero Games closing, they were quick to correct this, reassuring fans that the studio was not closing and the game was not cancelled, and that they were actively seeking a new publisher, with several already reaching out to them. Although unfortunately, this did force Romero Games to lay off an undisclosed number of employees. John and Brenda Romero are two of the most resilient developers out there, and this is hardly the biggest storm they've weathered. As a fan who's been eagerly awaiting Romero to return to first-person shooters, past making new episodes for Doom, I'm saddened by this news, but confident he and his team will rally and get this game on our hard drives.
Oh, no, not me!
Edgy SWAT Team Simulator, Ready or Not, finally came to consoles this last month, and with controversy in its wake, as the developer, Void Interactive, announced they were censoring some of its content in order to make the transition to consoles smoother. While the censored aspects are fairly minor, primarily addressing a few instances of nudity, violence, and the depiction of a drug overdose, the decision led to fan outcry and review bombing on Steam, as players felt the devs were compromising on the creative vision and were frustrated that the censorship, meant for the consoles, was applied to the original PC version as well. According to the developer, this was done to avoid potential bugs with crossplay. Despite all the hoopla though, it hasn't hurt the game's success. Upon launch, the console version hit 1 million units sold in just 3 days. For comparison, it took the PC Early Access version 36 days to hit that milestone. And the game's Steam player count doubled in the last month, largely due to the Steam summer sale. It should be noted though that shortly after the console launch and the PC update, a fan released the Uncensored or Not mod on Nexus that rolled back all of the censored changes. Personally, I don't think the censorship is that big of a deal, considering the things revised are few and pretty minor. That being said, I do think the developers should make the censored aspects an option to toggle on the PC version. Yes, I understand the developers' reasons for keeping the versions the same, but I do agree just because the console versions have to be toned down, it doesn't mean the PC version has to. And if there's a way to compromise here, I think they should do it. Splitgate 2, the online competitive FPS that is a mixture of Halo and Portal, continues to struggle. Developer 1047 Games officially launched the title from beta on June 6 of this year. Yep, only a couple months ago. And since then, the game's player count has dwindled due to complaints of the game lacking basic features and having underwhelming progression, as well as sharp criticism of its microtransactions, which have been described as anti-consumer and a blatant cash grab. Thus, in the wake of all of this, 1047 has decided to unlaunch the game and put it back into beta, in order to address its issues and player feedback. The goal is to relaunch the game in 2026, promising big sweeping changes. For those wondering, its Season 3 content is still planned for release. Along with this, they are shutting down servers for Splitgate 1, and have laid off 45 of their employees. This comes after a round of layoffs shortly after the game's launch. The number of those affected currently unknown. I will say, my friends and I have been enjoying Splitgate 2 as it provides the good, clean deathmatch fun we've been missing. However, we have been feeling its flaws and let down by its wonky battle pass, and that battle royale mode is a total blahfest. At the moment, it's hard to see it succeeding against stiff competition from the likes of Halo Infinite, Fortnite, and Call of Duty. Hopefully, 1047 is able to weather this storm and get the game back on track. I'd also advise them to knock it off with the hokey, tone-deaf media stunts.
Is Hellbound.
Hellraiser Revival was announced with a big operatic trailer, being a first-person survival horror based on the iconic horror franchise originally created by writer Clive Barker. It also sees the return of the original Pinhead actor Doug Bradley, a role that made him and the character iconic, and that he hasn't returned to in 20 years. Developed and published by Saber Interactive, you play as Aiden, a man who must fulfill a bargain he made with Pinhead and his gang of Cenobites to save his girlfriend. It has been reported that Clive Barker himself is involved as a creative consultant. I adore the original Hellraiser movie, and I love the idea of a video game adaptation, although on first blush of the trailer, I feel like this one could go either way. However, Saber Interactive does have a decent track record with their licensed efforts. More successes than not. Either way, I'm eager to see what sort of pleasure and pain this one brings. Following months of rumors and leaks, Battlefield 6 was officially announced with a cinematic trailer featuring all sorts of gritty modern warfare set to Bob Dylan's Masters of War mixed with the Battlefield theme. Neat. Personally, the trailer brought me lots of deja vu to past Battlefield titles, 3 and 4 in particular, as well as other modern military shooter franchises, which admittedly didn't get me too hyped. However, after the mixed reception of its futuristic predecessor, going back to what works with boots on the ground is probably a good thing. And judging by some of the gameplay that leaked onto the internet, the game is looking mighty pretty and mighty polished. At least, it looks that way. It should be noted that the game is being developed under the new Battlefield Studios, which is a collective of developers producing the game. Ripple Effect Studios, Motive Studio, Criterion Games, and of course DICE, the creator of the franchise. According to some leaks, Battlefield 6 is slated for an October 10th release. And there will be an open beta prior to its release, and a multiplayer trailer should be dropping today, so be sure to check that out if you're interested. Fallout Bakersfield, a standalone fan game based on the original Fallout and built in the GZ Doom engine, a supercharged version of the id Tech 1 engine that originally powered Doom, received a new trailer this month that got many a Fallout and Doom fan hyped, myself included. Developed by a small team headed by artist Alexander Berezin, Bakersfield aims to recreate the bleak and bizarre atmosphere of the Fallout universe. And while at first glance it looks very much like a classic run-and-gun shooter, looking closer it also appears to be incorporating RPG mechanics and systems. While the project looks quite far along, according to the end screen of the trailer, it's only 60% complete, and its release date currently unknown. I think it looks outstanding. If Bethesda was to officially create a boomer shooter spin-off of the Fallout franchise, a la what Warhammer 40k did with Bolt Gun, this is precisely what I'd imagine it to look like. But nope, this is an unofficial effort made by a group of talented, passionate fans. The developers have stressed it is not a commercial project and all rights belong to Bethesda, although considering how supportive Bethesda is of its fans and modding communities for all its franchises, I doubt this one is in danger of a cease and desist. This is looking to be a fantastic way to relive the original Fallout, and will be another example of what the awesome GZ Doom engine and Doom modding community is capable of. And finally, it was announced that a Wolfenstein TV series is in development at Amazon and being produced by Kilter Films, the same studio behind their hit Fallout TV series. Patrick Somerville is currently attached as the showrunner, known for writing the Netflix series Maniac as well as showrunning the series Station 11 for HBO Max. Jonathan Nolan, Lisa Joy, Athena Wickman, and James Altman will serve as executive producers, alongside Jörg Gustafsson of Machine Games, who has been behind the recent Wolfenstein titles, starting with 2014's Wolfenstein: The New Order. There are no plot details yet, although I'm gonna take a wild guess and say the first season will be about one BJ Blazkowicz escaping Castle Wolfenstein. It should be noted that while this is in development, it is not guaranteed to move forward into full production. Announcements like this are a dime a dozen and should be taken with a grain of salt. Following the success of the Fallout TV series, it's not surprising that Amazon is looking to develop another Bethesda property. And while this is speculation on my part, I would not be shocked if other Bethesda IP are currently being considered or are in early development, such as The Elder Scrolls, assuming Todd Howard approves it and it doesn't compete with Amazon's own Rings of Power, as well as Doom. And personally, I wouldn't mind a TV series set in the Dishonored universe. Amazon also has TV adaptations in the works for other gaming properties, specifically a Mass Effect series, God of War series, and a Warhammer 40k series starring Henry Cavill.
Look, you'll get paid if you finish this next job. So get out there, get the mission done, and absolutely no goofing off.
Co-op shooter Mycopunk released into early access, where up to 4 friends play as exterminators hired to rid a planet of a fungal infestation. Lots of shooting, building, and driving fun to be had here. This one is coming from publisher Devolver Digital, who for me rarely disappoints, and so far the early feedback on this one is glowing. No firm release date yet on the 1.0 version, but to quote the devs, we plan to be in early access for 6 months. But you know how things go. Dropping the same day was Shooty Shooty Robot Invasion, described by its Steam page as an absurdist FPS/interactive fiction, where you murder stupid robots and chat with idiot people. I discovered this one while researching this video and was immediately grabbed by its wild hand-drawn visuals, and seeing as I grew up on insane Adult Swim shows, this felt right up my alley. I'm hoping to give this one a try soon. System Shock 2 Remastered came to consoles, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One, and Series, as well as the Switch, following its PC release the month prior. I reviewed this classic sci-fi horror sim last month and liked it a great deal. You can find the link to my review down in the description. As discussed earlier, Ready or Not released onto consoles, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series. If you can handle less nudity and dismemberment compared to the prior PC version, then you will find one of the most intense, realistic, and outright disturbing games out there. That's great with friends. RoboCop Rogue City Unfinished Business, this standalone expansion to 2023's RoboCop Rogue City, stomped onto our systems, giving us more cybernetic crime fighting as well as flashback missions where you get to play as a pre-cybernetic Alex Murphy. Reviews for this one seem pretty solid so far. I haven't gotten to this expansion yet, but I really liked Rogue City. It was one of the better licensed titles I've played in some time. You can find my review for it down in the description. Brutal John 2 released into early access, a massive love letter to old-school first-person shooters, playing out like a parody to Duke Nukem 3D. If you're thinking, wait a second, when did Brutal John 1 come out? Well, surprise, this is Brutal John 1. They just renamed it to Brutal John 2. Why? Well, the original concept has evolved a lot, and it presents a second playable doggo character who is also named Brutal John. I've been playing some of the early access release, and so far I'd say it's a well put together boom shoot that's feeling pretty tight and is absurdly silly, sometimes to the point of cringe. Brutal John 2 is aiming to wrap up early access and go into 1.0 this December 2025, and has 2 content updates planned in the months leading up to it. Same day as Brutal John 2 came Splitgate, a PvP multiplayer shooter that some have described as Sea of Thieves in space. So far, reviews for this game from both players and critics are strong, and from where I'm sitting, this looks like one of the more creative-looking multiplayer games to drop in some time. Abiotic Factor, a co-op survival game with heavy Half-Life influence, left early access and released into 1.0 with a massive content update. It was also released onto consoles, Xbox and PlayStation specifically, and included on Xbox Game Pass as well as PlayStation Plus, with crossplay. So if you and your buddies are looking for some new co-op fun, this might do the trick. And finally, Killing Floor 3, the long-awaited successor to the co-op survival horror series that was originally birthed from an Unreal Tournament 2004 mod, finally shambled its way onto PC and consoles. This zombie-filled threequel promises an expansive arsenal, more dangerous locations, and a new gore system called Meat, allowing for more dismemberment and persistent blood. Unfortunately, the response to it from both critics and players is pretty mixed, with many praising its visuals and streamlining, but feeling like it's an overall downgrade compared to its predecessor. Perhaps this one needed a little more time in the oven. Lastly, let's look at some upcoming FPS titles. Included here are some releases next month that I think should be on your radar, demos that I played for upcoming titles in the months ahead that I thought were fun and or interesting, and maybe a few titles some little birdies floated my way. There's a handful of indie FPSs to look forward to in August, such as Technoplasm, which is dropping into early access August 4th, essentially an FPS beat-em-up that is unlike anything I've played. Horde Lord, the spin-off of the boomer shooter Gravelord, has you taking on waves of endless enemies in arena combat. It's releasing August 18th on Steam, GOG, and the Epic Games Store. And Voidbreaker is coming to early access on August 20th, a trippy futuristic roguelite shooter featuring lots of gun customization.
Overkill!
So this is pretty interesting. Rack was an arcade first-person shooter released back in 2014, a few years before the boomer shooter wave hit, and thus flying under the radar for most. A decade later, its developer is remaking the title, feeling the original never met their expectations and hoping to capture a new audience with it. They were kind enough to send me a build of the game, and I have to say, while it's a fairly straightforward old-school FPS, it was one that had me pretty addicted. The combat is fun, tight, and polished with a dopamine-inducing combo system, and the aesthetic makes it feel like an arcade light gun game that has gone off the rails, literally. It also vibed a lot like Rise of the Triad for me, right down to the collectible coins. From what the dev has told me, Rack Remake is targeting an October release sometime after Steam Next Fest, and a demo should be dropping in about a month or so. If you're interested, you can wishlist the game now. The link is down in the description. Developer Lone Wolf got his upcoming boom shoot KIRK on my radar, essentially a Quake-style FPS set in a Victorian universe with Lovecraftian monsters, steampunk weapons, and time-altering mechanics. I'm also detecting some MC Escher influence. I think this looks like a lot of fun. Feels like a steampunk Dusk to me. I tried to get my hands on an early build of it, but sadly to no avail. However, the dev assured me a demo should be dropping later this year. I'm looking forward to it. A demo for a title called Runeblight dropped this month that I thought was pretty neat. No, this is not the prettiest looking game in the world, but it feels pretty good to play and has a persistent world structure that's inspired by Souls-likes. Stylistically, that is. Gameplay-wise, I'd call it more of a first-person Metroidvania, which I'm a sucker for. The combat is okay so far, but the exploration and atmosphere are fun and compelling. However, this one is still pretty early in development. There's no word on when the early access version will be dropping, and even then, the dev claims the full release won't be coming until 2027 at the latest. But I do think this is one to keep an eye on and check out. If you're interested, the demo is linked in my description. Have you ever dreamed of taking drugs, going into a hallucinatory rage, and jumping out your apartment window? Well then, Adrenaline Overdrive is for you. This is an old-school movement shooter where you rampage through an alternate 1980s Brooklyn fueled by an experimental drug. I got to check out the demo for this one early and found it to be an enjoyable, trippy, and humorous time, reminding me a bit of titles like Ultra Kill and Post Void. I also thought my pyramid hallucination buddy was kind of cute, although I do think the enemies need some work, feeling somewhat janky and overall unmemorable. Regardless, I think this one has some potential and the demo is pretty fun. Link is down in the description. Finally, a demo for the deep-sea survival horror Beneath was dropped towards the end of the month, placing you in an oceanic scientific research facility that's been infested with tentacles, zombies, and armed goons. The demo was sent to me early, and I have to be honest, I thought it was pretty rough around the edges. However, it does present some decently creepy atmosphere, and the combat and overall vibe of the game feel reminiscent of something like Fear. No word on a release date yet, other than sometime in 2025. And that's it for me. If there's any FPS news stories, releases, or upcoming titles not featured here that you care about, please be sure to share down in the comments. And as far as my channel goes, be sure to check out my recent reviews for Project Warlock 2, System Shock 2, as well as my Duo of Doom videos for 2016 and the Dark Ages, all linked below. I hope all of you are doing well. See you next month for more State of the Boom. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like, subscribe, share, and smack that bell. If you want to come say hi, my Discord is linked below, along with my affiliate links. I'm KIRK, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.